Okay. Welcome and thank you very much to this event organized for the World Water Day 2024 within the framework of the AG-WaMED project, which is a PRIMA project. My name is Giulio Castelli and I'm a researcher at the University of Florence. And I'm going to introduce you quickly the project framework and the development of the webinar of today, and I hope you enjoy. So the title of the webinar of today is Leveraging Non-Conventional Water for Peace. The topic of the World Water Day is leveraging water for peace, but in our project we deal mainly with non-conventional water technologies. So we decided to make a specific side event, which is actually in advance with the respect of the World Water Day, which is tomorrow, in order to show how also non-conventional water technologies could be helpful for reaching peace through shared water management. And the day of today is organized by the AG-WaMED project, by the Water Harvesting Lab at the University of Florence, and by the International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance. So this is the agenda of today. I will give some welcoming remarks. Then we have Dr. Francesca Greco, who has a long-standing career in different excellence centers related to water management, and is actually Marie Curie Research Fellow at the University of Bergamo in Italy. Then we have Dr. Chloe Nicolas Artero from the Polytechnic University of Milan, who is actually one of the researchers of the AG-WaMED project. She will present case study of a transboundary river, which we are managing within the AG-WaMED project, and where we are using non-conventional waters. And then we will have Margarita Pacheco, who is one of the... Pacheco.
That's very Spanish.
Yes. But you are actually in Colombia now.
I am in Cartagena, Colombia. Yes, yeah. I'm very Colombian.
So she will deliver a specific lesson on how using rainwater harvesting as a way of peace building. And for this latest presentation, we will not have a PowerPoint, but we will send you the paper that is the center of this presentation, and we will make a comment with Dr. Pacheco. And then we will have a question and answer session, and then the concluding remarks by Professor Elena Bresci, who is the coordinator of the AG-WaMED project at the University of Florence in Italy. So just some few information about this project. Is a project funded in the PRIMA call, which is a call related to Mediterranean countries. And we have 7 partners: the University of Florence, the Polytechnic University of Milan, the Polytechnic University of Madrid, the Institute of Arid Regions in Medina, Tunisia, Alexandria University in Egypt, the Agronomic Research Center in Greece, the University of Thebes in Algeria, and then as in-kind partner, we have the participation of the Free University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We are working for improving the management of non-conventional waters in dry areas for living labs in Egypt, Italy, Spain, and we have also a transboundary case study between Tunisia and Algeria, and this will be the one that we will check today with one of the presentation. Our objective is strictly related not only to the technology themselves, but also to policy level for improving the governance of water scarce area in the Mediterranean, And of course, as I mentioned, the focus is on non-conventional waters. And what do we mean by non-conventional waters? Basically, we are working on three main pillars. So the use of wastewater and low quality water after treatments, so reclaimed wastewater, the use of desalinated seawater, but also the use of rainwater as basically supplemental water source for irrigation in water scarce areas. So this is a little bit the technology on which we are focusing on. If you want more information about this project, these are some references. We have a website, but you can follow also us on Facebook and Twitter. And also on YouTube, we have a web page with several video materials, including this webinar. This webinar will be online there, I think, in a couple of weeks. So I put again the agenda now, and I leave the floor to Dr. Francesca Greco, who will talk about the theme of the World Water Day, water security for peace. Thank you, Francesca, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me here today. Let me try and see if my screen is sharing. Are you all seeing the full screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. My name is Francesca Greco, and I'm very happy to have this international audience this morning with me. I have 20 years experience in transboundary water conflict and cooperation issues in virtual water and food politics. And I come from King's College London, and now I am back to Italy after 20 years at the University of Bergamo, which I'm representing today, also on behalf of Professor Filippo Menga, as a Marie Curie Research Fellow. So I have the task to give a presentation on water security for peace, which is a huge topic, and I will do my best to use my 20 minutes. So I will try to talk about water security across geographies of contestation, identities, intersectional disputes, territorial struggles, and our perception of water, of where water is. So since this webinar is open to the public, I will also go back to the main numbers that the experts in the room will already know, but let us do that, and please allow me to do that. So I will explore three levels of water security. The one of international rivers and lakes and transboundary aquifers, so transboundary water bodies, the level of food security and food production, and the level of local struggles for human right to water. So these are the infographics that you all know, and that are telling us that the majority of fresh water is captured under the form of ice, and the 30% is underground. So the rest, it's a very little amount of surface water of rivers and lakes. And where is the water on Earth? Water is basically where we don't see it, because rivers and lakes only account for 0.3% of the liquid fresh water of the planet. So it's our imaginary, it's our perception of rivers and lakes that makes them so important to us. We only perceive what we can see, but the United Nations and the UN Water show us last year, for example, that Durham water accounts for the 99% of liquid water on Earth. And this is the Middle East and North Africa region, where basically the majority of these countries are heavily relying on groundwater for their needs and consumption. So this is basically where groundwater is. And the majority of you will obviously know that aquifers do not see the political borders of countries. So the majority of the aquifers on Earth are shared. So they are shared water. And now we go and see who consumes water. So if you have your mobile with you, please go to the website thewaterweeat.com and try to browse this incredibly intelligent application made by Angela Morelli. Angela Morelli is an info design graphic designer who decided to devote her life for the communication of water consumption. And this is an amazing infographic that she did in order to show how much water is consumed when we produce a piece of meat, stack of meat. So in this huge wall of water bottles, there is the water consumption of a piece of meat. So what was important in my research and in the research of Professor Tony Allen from King's College London was to communicate where is water consumption actually happening. And he used to call this concept virtual water, water embedded in food production, but also big water. So if you see this infographic, the big water is the water needed for food production that we consume every day. Then you have the smaller water, the small water in the dark blue part of the graphic is the industrial water consumption, and the smaller one, the light blue, is the domestic water. So basically, FAO also recognized that agriculture is withdrawing 69% of water, but it's consuming the 93%. Why is there this difference? Because the rainwater is included in the water consumption of agriculture. So we do consume water in our household, but we do consume more water in our food consumption. And these are some infographics that you can find everywhere on the internet, where you can actually see how much water is needed to produce beef, sheep meat, pork, goat meat, chicken, and how food is intensive in water consumption, the more meat it contains. So these are other infographics that I did just to show that for a kilo of meat, it takes 5,300 liters of water, and for your glass of wine, 900 liters. So basically, this is just an infographic that we produced with UNESCO some years ago when I used to work at the World Water Development Program, World Water Assessment Program, just to show that even when we buy a leather bag, we consume 17,000 liters of water, or when we buy a t-shirt, we consume more than 2,000 liters of water. Everything we buy, everything we eat is consuming water. And who is eating the most? We are eating the most of this water. So Europe is the most water intense, together with the United States and industrial countries, which is importing the majority of food from the rest of the world and consuming the water which was needed to produce that food. So we basically eat other people's water. If you see the United States, they are green just because they also export a lot of food, but they are also consuming at the same level of the other Occidental economies. So if you think about our water cycle, which was at the beginning of how we learned it at elementary school, a closed water cycle with evapotranspiration, rain, and a closed cycle of the water is still there physically. But if we look at it from an economic point of view and political economy point of view, no water basin is closed anymore. No water basin is a closed environment anymore. Everything is connected through food trade. So water security and the analysis of conflicts will be presented today through the notion of scale. So we will see three different scales of water security. The scale of state entities, so the transboundary water disputes. Then we will go to a lower scale, and we will see how regional and local actors are also struggling for the human right to water, which is also a water security issue. And then we will see the global scale of water injustice and contestation in the global food production, which is more linked to the traditional production of political ecology. So we will start with state entities. Traditional hydropolitics only see rivers and lakes. Very rarely they have been dealing with aquifers, right? So water across geopolitics of international river disputes was depicted with maps. These are the maps of the main dispute of transboundary water. And these are the list of the river we all know. We know the Aral Sea, the Jordan River, the Nile, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and all the struggles across these rivers. And water security across geopolitics of these rivers looks like that. Also, international river basins are shared. The majority of our basins are shared. And this is why some narratives have developed in the last 50 years regarding the sharing of this water. There was the Harmon Doctrine, which was using the total territorial sovereignty over national waters. All the waters in my territory are mine. This is my dam, and I can do whatever I want with the water of my river if I build a dam. So water was a divisive topic. Our river, your river, upstream and downstream narratives, they were shaping identities. And water was also and is also today, at the same time, also a spiritual item, a traditional and an historical definition of identities. If we think about the identity of Egypt with the Nile, the sacred water of the Ganges in India, or the historical roots of Mesopotamia and the fertile land, which was Mesopotamia, which is now modern Iraq. So water and its spiritual values and its historical value are utilized today in contested water, in disputed water. So the prior use, I was using this water before you, and the historical rights, we have the historical rights on this water, are instruments which are currently used in international hydropolitics. For example, Egypt and Iraq are calling for their historical rights over their rivers, but they have totally different situation because of their political situation. But water means more frequently cooperation than conflict. This is what Aaron Wolf from Oregon State University discovered with this database. And we basically cooperate more than argue over our water resources. So thanks to his contribution, studies on water cooperation were also consolidated in the United Nations politics. And also Toliana, the promoter of the concept of virtual water, asked himself why there were no water wars. If we look at the high percentage of food imports to the Middle East, we can understand why countries do not go to war over water. They solve their water shortages through trade. So in this sense, the import of virtual water, the water embedded in food production, could be considered as a catalyst of peace. And this is the map of the SDG 6.5.2, the Sustainable Development Goal monitoring the transboundary water covered by operational arrangement. Only 1/4 of countries have arrangements so far. This is another map produced by the European Commission, showing us the likelihood of hydropolitical issues. What do you see here? What struck me was the black part of the map, which was coinciding with events, conflictual events related to water. Why do we have the Israeli and Palestinian region and the ex-Yugoslavia countries so black? Because when there was a war, also water events were affected by the war. So basically, low water is also affected by war events in a negative way. So water conflict can also overlap with non-water related conflicts and increase the likelihood of water conflictual events. Moreover, water and cooperation can coexist, and there is a different intensity of water conflict. So there are many categories of categorization of water conflictual events, because water can be a trigger, water can be a weapon, water can be a casualty, so can be a victim of conflict. So I invite you to go through this map if you have time. But this was just related to the 0.3% of our fresh liquid water on Earth. Now I would like to draw your attention to another level, to the global level, the land and water grabbing, the food production, the big water. So water security is also a topic in food production, and conflict and contestation is happening also at the global level. And institutes like International Land Coalition have pointed out and contested the huge land and water grabbing happening. So I also invite you to explore the Water Grabbing Observatory website to go through these issues. And then we have the dispute across intersectoral across sector, industry, agriculture, and domestic use, which are linked to the big topic of the nexus. Food, energy, and water are strictly linked, and these are where also disputes are happening. So what did society choose to do? Technology. We decided to produce technology to produce more water. So we have been producing through civilization, large dams, desalination plants, diversion of large quantities of water. And there are many examples I could do here. There is the big water transfer from Turkey to the north region of Cyprus. There is a great man-made river in Libya, started by Gaddafi. There is the DC water channel, bringing water from the deep south of Jordan to the Great Amman area. And then there is the Red Dead project, which never happened, but was a huge technological fix. So what is important today for me is introducing the concept of water decoupling. So what is the concept of water decoupling, and why I think it's also useful for this project that you are implementing? That the total renewable water resources of a nation could be decoupled from the need of a society if we increase the quantity of water available to that nation. So if we desalinate, if we recycle water, if we import virtual water, our society is no longer coupled to the availability of water that they have in their own country. So the concept of integrated water resource management was also telling us that the supply side and the demand side are two important parts. No, shall we as humanity go on and on in increasing the water we consume, producing more water, or shall we decrease our demand? So the solution should be to increase availability or to decrease our consumption. And this is what's happening in the future. This is the BRIC and their consumption of meat. Their consumption of meat will increase. This is the pattern of how meat consumption is increasing in the world, and this will have a huge consequence on water withdrawals, and animal feed and meat consumption are water intense. So the projection of the water demand for the next year until 2050 is the following, and you can see how BRIC countries are important in this projection. So we'll have a 30% more of water consumption, and the water is still the same in this planet. Population will be growing and the consumption will be growing. So I just leave it with a final example regarding Egypt. You remember during the Ukraine war, there was a problem of trading the Russian and Ukrainian grain, maize and wheat, and Egypt was dependent of 85% to cover their needs for Ukraine and Russia. So Egypt had to undergo an import substitution, and these are the dependency of all African countries from just the two countries of Ukraine and Russia. So physical water scarcity and agro-food import from Russia and Ukraine are showing us how water security is connected to food trade and to food security. In fact, Egypt has imposed a stop in the export of their own agricultural production and a switch to another import substitution for their supply. So the local scale of water security, just to wrap up, is that we also have problem of contestation of the human right to water at the local scale, and there are struggles which are now became famous, like the one in Kerala in India, Cochabamba in Bolivia. There is a huge discussion regarding the Ebro River diversion in Spain, and the human right to water is a problem not only in the so-called developing country, but also in the Occidental country, because it's a very young right. And Examples are everywhere on the web if you want to look it up, how struggles for the human right to water is still not there. So human right to water out of reach is part of water security issue. When we talk about water security for peace, which water are we talking about? Small water or big water? So food water or the liquid water or rivers and lakes? Which water security are we talking about? What about groundwater? Why groundwater is always silent? Food security and water security are deeply interconnected. So I just leave you with these questions more than a complete overview because it's impossible with the 20 minutes, just to give you some food for thought regarding these three levels: the international disputes regarding shared water of rivers and lakes and aquifer, the global level of water and land grabbing and food production, and the local level of contested water for the achievement of the human right to water. These will be the perspective that I would like to give you today. And when we are talking about peace, which peace are we devising for our societies? If we, during the war, we destroy water resources of an entire region, area, or country, we target water as a military action. And we saw this both in Gaza and
Thank you very much, Francesca. Very inspiring. We really, I mean, personally, I really appreciate this, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. But if you can stay and it's not a problem,
I will.
It would be great to have like not spot question, but everything together. So I think I should give the floor now to Dr. Claude Nicolas Artero. I hope now is fine with the screen sharing. You can make it if you want.
I think.
Do you want to try?
Can you see my slide?
Yeah, perfectly working.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to celebrate the World Water Day with you and we in the AG-WaMED project. Today, in my presentation, I will talk about a case study, the study of the El Kebir Basin, which is located between Algeria and Tunisia. And the goal of this presentation is to assess the policies of unconventional water in both countries. Let's start with a short definition. Unconventional water refers to alternative technologies for using untapped resources, such as seawater, or improving the use of conventional water, such as groundwater recharge. Unconventional water are particularly used and developed in arid and semi-arid regions, and they have recently gained interest as adaptation strategies to cope with climate change effects. It is believed that they could lead states toward sustainable transitions to ensure food security. For instance, in the Maghreb, on March 22 in 2021, the Arab Maghreb Union and the FAO launched the Maghreb Initiative for Non-Conventional Water. In this presentation, I will address the following research question. To what extent does the water transition initiated at the national level ensure food security? My discussion is situated at the intersection between sustainability transition studies and political ecology. I won't be longer in the presentation of the theoretical approach, but just to say that I will critically examine the socio-technical innovations associated with unconventional water production. And this my study aims to identify the strengths and the limitations of transboundary water governance between Algeria and Tunisia. I will demonstrate that at present, the water transitions driven by unconventional water production in El Kebir Basin is insufficient to guarantee food security, and it reveals the fragility of transboundary cooperation. The research methodology relied on consulting secondary data, as for instance, legal text, census, and reports. I also conducted several interviews and field observations in Tunisia. You can see in this map the transboundary basin. It is a very dry area where commercial agriculture is developing due to a high level of sunlight. In the basin, where you can see that there are two main cities, Bir El Ater and Gafsa. There is also a dam in Algeria and a dam to promote groundwater infiltration in Tunisia. This is the plan of my presentation. Sorry. First, I will talk about or present the potential and limits of unconventional water solutions for addressing drought. Then I will describe the race for groundwater for export-oriented agriculture. And at the end, I will talk about the necessity to enhance cross-border cooperation. Okay, in the El Kebir Basin, there are fewer unconventional water production infrastructure compared to other regions in Algeria or Tunisia. Most of these infrastructure are in Tunisian part of the basin, focusing on the reusing wastewater and replenishing groundwater. In the Algerian city of Bir El Ater, which is upstream of the basin, the wastewater reuse is not possible. This is because the treatment plant lacks the capacity to ensure adequate quality. We will see that it's the case also in Tunisia. Recently, the Tunisian government expanded the wastewater treatment plant in the city of Gafsa to increase the reuse of treated water to 1.14 million cubic meters per year. Currently, most of the reused water is used for industrial purposes. Specifically, 60% of this water is used by the Tunisian chemical group's phosphate extraction plant. So that means that 40% is currently used for agricultural purposes. This, to have an idea, this volume allows for the irrigation of 120 hectares of oasis lands near the treatment plant that you can see in the picture on the right side. However, due to the poor quality of the water, regulations prohibit direct exposure of fruits and vegetables to water. And this is a big problem because the Gafsa oasis includes vegetable crops, olive groves, and palm groves. Nevertheless, interviewees explain that this measure and those regulations are not always respected by local producers and local farmers. That's a problem because it could lead to a public health risk. The second unconventional water infrastructure in the basin is the Oued El Kebir Dam. It was designed to enhance groundwater recharge. It has a capacity of 23 million cubic meters. It also aims to temporarily retain runoff water to prevent downstream flooding and enable also irrigation. However, the problem is that the decreased precipitation levels have limited the potential of this large infrastructure. But it is important to stress that there is actually a potential for unconventional water production and use in the basin. In fact, in Tunisia and Algeria, there are traditional hydraulic techniques which allow recharging groundwater through rainwater harvesting. There are different techniques, for instance, Gessour and Mescat. You can see in the picture Gessour. These practices rely on capturing runoff water to recharge local aquifers or spreading floodwaters from wadis. Actually, they support local subsistence agriculture. They also help retain water during heavy storms and prevent erosion. So there are a great infrastructure, but the problem is that these solutions are falling out of use. If we look at the public policies in this area, in Algeria and Tunisia, we can see that the Algerian government doesn't provide any support for this kind of solution, but it is quite different in Tunisia. In fact, in Tunisian government finance the renovation of such hydraulic techniques. However, the problem is that they are gradually being abandoned due to insufficient maintenance and investment from users. That's a problem because given the challenges of using unconventional water source in the basin, as I have just told you, inhabitants and farmers are turning to individual water source to develop a more profitable commercial agriculture. In El Kebir Basin, groundwater extraction is now the primary water source. And this situation is also driven by agricultural policies which promotes intensive farming in both Algeria and Tunisia. In Algeria, intensive agriculture is mainly found in the Elma El Abiod plain, which is in the north of the basin. You can see it in the map. Groundwater reserves are under pressure due to deep wells, some reaching depth exceeding 200 meters. There is also a serious issue of soil and water quality deterioration in this Elma El Abiod plain. Similarly, in Tunisia, some farmers are shifting towards intensive crops. They are using new varieties of olives to increase productivity per hectare. These farmers rely on groundwater and localized irrigation, which is relatively new for this kind of crop. Since the aquifers have limited replenishment, Tunisia government has halted the allocation of water rights, but the problem is like, as in Algeria, some farmers still dig unauthorized wells. And it's a big issue now in Tunisia and Algeria. In this case for water, inequalities in water access are increasing. Wealthier farmers can dig deep wells and get connected to electricity, allowing them to farm more intensively. If you would like to have an idea, it can cost quite a bit, around 13,000 to 17,000 dinars to drill a 100-meter well, and it's a lot. Some of these farmers even get electricity from the national company without proper permits. Sometimes they use solar panels to be autonomous, and because there is little government regulation on well drilling, these farmers can take out as much water as they need. If we look at the profile of farmers involved in this commercial agriculture, we can see that they are mainly non-local investors. In Tunisia, new farmers are getting into intensive farming using money from smuggling or with investment from other parts of the country or even abroad, like Italy. And in Algeria, families are turning to this intensive agriculture with the help from investors from the north of the country who get a share of the profits. The problem with this kind of agriculture is that it increases pressure on the groundwater, leading to declining water levels, and the other farmers who are less economically privileged have to struggle to access water and continue their activities for local consumption. In fact, not everyone has the money or connections to do this kind of intensive farming. And as the groundwater level decreases, drilling wells becomes more and more costly. And with less rainfall due to the climate change, it's harder to find surface water. So this situation is particularly challenging for farmers who depend on rain for their animals to graze as pastoralism. And some people have to purchase bottled water or have water delivered by cistern trucks for their animals and their families. The intensive use of aquifers pose a threat to ecosystem sustainability and food security. This environmental degradation is evidenced by soil salinization and a decrease in both the quantity and quality of available water. In this regard, intensive agriculture activities on both sides of the border, particularly upstream in Algeria, endanger the development capacities of future generations in the region. We can estimate that in the medium to long term, not only will water become scarce due to the inability of aquifers to recharge, but the soil will also become less cultivable. And therefore, an entire ecosystem and the ways of life which are associated to it are being degraded and are at risk of disappearing. What is the role of the state in this basin and to cope with this situation? At the local level, state institutions have limited capacity to control water usage. Both countries have water codes and laws to protect water resources and aquifers. However, in both cases, there is a lack of enforcement capacity. The controlling illegal drilling is difficult due to limited property access or hidden wells, and additionally, local administrations lack resources to travel across the territory and control those illegal drilling. Overall, the absence of sanctions reflects the ambivalent stance of states between the need to develop the economy through agriculture and the need to protect water resources. Despite this critical situation, Tunisia and Algeria have not signed any agreements or treaties to establish coordinated and integrated governance of the aquifers and the transboundary basin. As a result, water management plans rely on almost all surface water flowing within each national territory. Sustainability managing transboundary aquifers is a key development challenge in North African countries. Several efforts have been made by countries in the Sahara to protect aquifers. For instance, the Sahara and Sahel Observatory was established in 1992 to monitor the environment of the region and promote coordinated management of shared water resources. But despite this situation in the Sahara and Sahel aquifer system, as I told to you, Tunisia and Algeria have not signed an agreement to establish coordinated and integrated governance. This lack of cross-border cooperation results in a lack of concrete commitment from states and local authorities to preserve aquifers. Civil society or users don't propose forms of organization to monitor the state of the aquifer neither, and in general, the scale of the aquifers or watershed is not used as a management space or territory. To conclude, the case of the El Kebir Basin shows that policies regarding unconventional water production in Algeria and Tunisia are still limited. There is still a lot of progress to be made for these socio-technical innovations to effectively ensure local and national food security. For water sharing to contribute to peace, as I highlighted in this year's World Water Day theme, several barriers need to be overcome. Firstly, it's crucial to ensure that unconventional water sources are allocated for agricultural development rather than other industries. Secondly, it's important to ensure that the aim of this agriculture is indeed to secure food for the population and not to threaten local subsistence farming, which is very difficult to decision to make. And lastly, it's essential to ensure that the methods of production for this agriculture do not jeopardize the soils and water resource for future generations. That's all for me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Very, very interesting also this one. I hope there will be time at the end to share some discussion altogether. I think there is one question, but maybe we shall leave everything to the end and make a very nice session of question and answer. And now we have our third speaker, Dr. Margarita Pacheco, who is in the committee of the International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance and has a widespread experience on the use of rainwater and its implication also under a social point of view. Margarita, you are muted, so you have to deactivate your microphone. Margarita, you are muted. You have to unmute.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Good morning. So, here in Colombia, it's 8 a.m. breakfast time, and I'm talking from an Amazonian basin country. I mean, we are changing continents with very different situations. Thank you, Julio, for inviting me and putting the International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance in collaboration with the other institutions. First of all, I would like to say that I don't eat meat. I decided that breeding cattle is one of the main issues to preserve water. So this is a personal decision that I only eat fish. Nothing that has legs. I would like to contextualize first of all, is that we are having in Colombia the next COP16 on biodiversity in Cali, Colombia, on the 21st of October for 2 weeks. And this is an issue that I want to raise here, which is preserving biodiversity and rainwater. Now, I would like to highlight the concept of biodiversity in all this debate, because I am in a tropical country, in an Amazonian and Orinoco basin, with specific problems to the region, to the Latin American context. I'm in a country with two oceans, the Pacific and the Caribbean, meaning two regulators of climate, of the world. Secondly, the Amazon basin is controlling everybody's water provision. And this is key to this worldwide discourse. In the local context, we have several problems, like deforestation, narcotráfico, meaning this is the first economy with narco dealings, and which means laundering money for cattle breeding, for deforestation, for illegal mining using mercury. And all these big issues, illegal economic activities, are affecting another water issue, which is connectivity. Connectivity between Andes, Amazonia, Orinoco. The whole ecosystem is connected, and if they are not connected, they don't produce rainwater. So let's have the big picture. The big picture is that in the intertropical countries, we produce rain with the flying rivers. And this concept of the flying rivers are all these currents that are created in the hydrological cycle. And we need the tropical rainforest to produce these flying rivers. And if we cut the trees, we don't have these flying rivers. So this is a call that if we want peace, we have to stop deforestation. This is a key issue, a key political issue at this moment in Colombia, in Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Venezuela, Guyanas. And I'm talking on behalf of this 8-country basin where different phenomena are taking place and where all the clouds are born. The flying rivers are key, are the cradle of water. So I think we cannot have peace until such time that we have real agreements, political agreements, like the Amazonian Treaty, Tratado de Cooperación Amazónica. This Tratado de Cooperación Amazónica is already a rundown treaty, which was managed from Brasilia in the period of Bolsonaro. You can imagine the water issue in Bolsonaro's hands. Dreadful. Of course, he was promoting deforestation and occupation of Amazonian lands to build, to have monoculture crops, which is obviously for the Amazonian ecosystem a dreadful political decision. And we have even in Colombia, in the transition of the lowlands, meaning Orinoco and Amazonia, these transition places are extremely important because these are the moment where the jungle starts and the plains stop. What is happening is that there are investors investing for monocultures in thousands and thousands of hectares, like the Mennonites, religious groups that have been buying land to plant monoculture. I want to give this big picture because it's very difficult to talk about peace when you have to inherit political decisions coming from previous governments and neglecting the socio-economical and environmental conditions of these areas. The other picture that comes into this is climate change vulnerability. We are living here in the equatorial area a very strong Niño phenomena. We haven't had rains for the last 3 or 4 months, which is terrible. I mean, if you talk about rainwater harvesting at this moment with no rains, it's very difficult to convince politicians to put this into the national development plans and municipal development plans so they can encourage water collection, water uses. However, I would like to come back to 2016. 2016, we had the peace agreement signed by government, by President Santos and the FARC guerrilla. And it was a very important momentum, historical momentum, because ironically, the FARC guerrilla was protecting the environment. They were protecting biodiversity and they were punishing those who would go to cut trees in a very open way. The guerrilla was replacing the state in the most remote places. Of course, it was a very unusual control made by the illegal armed groups. After the 2016 agreement that many of these signatories of peace gave up their arms and they became new dwellers of colonies to establish there, the government gave to many groups, I mean, we are talking about thousands of peace signers, they demobilized and they gave up the arms. And 2017 starts with a huge deforestation data because there was nobody to control. It's very ironical, but indeed, the guerrilla was controlling deforestation, thus controlling flying rivers, thus controlling water security. So, I mean, for those who know a little bit of our history, our recent peace agreement history, it is very important to link the peace process, which is currently going on with President Petro, which is the first left-wing president we have in Colombia, with a huge opposition. I mean, the right is really being hard to criticize whatever he does. He opens the mouth and he's criticized. It's a very tough way. I mean, he has to govern with a very tough opposition. However, Amazonia is a key political point in the agenda. For the first time, we have Amazonia-Orinoquia ecosystem as a key planetary priority place to protect, which means that the groups that are still there around, the position of the government nowadays is to negotiate with all of them for what President Petro calls la paz total, la pace totale. A very challenging objective to deal with paramilitaries, with narco traffics, with dissidents of the FARC, The ELN, Ejército de Liberación Nacional, is a very polyphacetic group of armed people, and that are located in different places of the country. But I want to say that nowadays in 2024, there is a high awareness in the country about protecting biodiversity. And I come back again to highlight, and I invite you to think about how we can deal as water believers, as water conservation believers, how can we put together a panel for COP16 in Colombia about preserving water sources and biodiversity, which is key to the world. So, Julio, I think that this is a great opportunity to give a new scope to the Mediterranean studies and Tunisia, Libya, I mean the north of Africa countries, to give them another sight of their own problematic. And I would love to have and organize with you guys something here in Colombia for the COP16, because I think it's very important, not only the exchanges of hemispherical conditions in terms of political ways of evolving the water issue, but that you guys, you put yourself also in biodiversity mode. Now, about the multi-ethnical and multicultural identity of the Amazon. This is key to protect the flying rivers, and it's key to protect the water basins. The question is that the rivers nowadays, unfortunately, I have to say, many are polluted with mercury, with illegal gold mining. It is dreadful. And this is happening. This is, and add up to that, corruption. Corruption at different layers. And corruption is also linked with water issues. And I wonder how it develops in different settings. I think it's a very important political moment due to also the COP29, which is going to be in Brazil in 2025, next year. We have two main international meetings in this hemisphere, in Brazil and Colombia. And I invite you to think about it, how we can join forces here with rainwater harvesting, with groundwater sources, with water quality in surface water, because this is affecting many rural communities, indigenous communities in the basin, and of course, public health issues. And public health has to do also, and has to deal with the legalization of illegal crops. I'm not talking about coca leaf. Coca leaf is a fantastic sacred plant, but I'm talking about cocaine, which is a processed, horrible thing that helps, that puts this whole region at stake with the market of producing cocaine exported to Europe. You in Europe are equally linked with this issue. And you would say, why am I talking about that if we are talking about water? Because they are using water for all that. And because it's happening in the most important ecosystem in the world, where we are taking trees and deforesting to laundry money as well. The laundering of the money is terrible. These guys are buying thousands of hectares to laundry money. So I wanted you to put you in this context. So how are we building peace? I appreciate, Julio, that you circulate my article, which was written 2019, published by Universidad de Guadalajara, Arturo Gleason, and myself. I was co-editor, to give, say, a context, the context of what I'm talking about. But I think we have to be updated. Things are updating very quickly. And we are in 2024 in a circumstance where climate change became the huge issue, the political international issue, in the middle of two wars. Ukraine war with Russia invading Ukraine, and the Middle East. We are very concerned about these two factors, and we don't know how this is going to change the rhythm of producing water as well. So I invite you to think all this problematic in the current socio-political context of the world. And to be more precise, in the Amazonia Basin context, to understand, because we are globally linked with other peace processes and with narcotráfico. And my beloved flying rivers can suffer really from all these externalities. So I open the table to discuss these issues.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Very interesting. And like, it's great. I really appreciate, honestly, that you were also so proactive, inviting the people gathered to maybe join forces, because this is a project on the Mediterranean area, but actually I think Francesca has international experience. Chloe developed PhD in Chile, and like me and Margarita are together in the committee of the International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance. So definitely, like, we can link, we can make a lot of links. And also, I mean, your paper, I think, was circulated among the participants to the workshop, so everyone has it. And yeah, I mean, I think now we have 15 minutes, officially 15 minutes for discussion, then we can stay more. And want just to point out one important element that is related to maybe something that we already discussed, but is actually that really we are going in one situation where like the trade and water security, food security, but also energy security, they can generate conflict also with those that you call teleconnections. And this means, for instance, you have a war in Ukraine, and maybe you have impacts on the food and the water system around the world. So that's, I think, it's a very nice pitch on your side. Just putting down another paper that I think is very timely, and it's from one researcher that is also in the AG-WaMED project. I put the paper in the chat if you are interested. But like that's an extra thing. So I would open the floor for questions from the audience. And please, maybe if you manage, just raise your hand before the question, and we are happy to speak with you, or drop eventually the question in the chat. Thank you. Chloe, please.
Yes. Thank you, Francesca and Margarita, for your presentation. I have a question for Margarita. I have heard that in Colombia there is a new an alternative to protect a river. This is, but they are trying. They would like to recognize the legal personality to rivers. Could you please explain us this social innovation and juridical legal innovation, and if you have information if it is a good solution to protect water quality and quantity? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe, for your question. Yes, this is a quite unique legal figure, is that certain rivers have now legal rights. Son sujeto de derechos, subject of rights, of human rights. This is a very interesting figure because water includes the communities who use and protect the river. And, for example, Rio Atrato in the Chocó, in the bioregion of Chocó, it is declared sujeto de derechos. You Italians, you understand a little bit Spanish, don't you? Soggetto di diritti. And this gives some legal tools for people to claim what is happening in the river, like mining, for example, like polluting waters and fish and biodiversity because of illegal mining. There is a very interesting phenomena going on, and I'm in contact with some local groups, is that people who used to do mining, illegal mining, now they want to declare themselves ex-miners, ex-illegal miners, and now we have environmental awareness and we are conservationists. And there are associations in Putumayo, Amazonia, they are planting and restoring the places that they really messed up by illegal mining. And mind you, Julio, the holes, the holes that they left after the mining, they are trying to see how they can use it for rainwater harvesting. So there is like a recycling of the damage into rainwater collection. And it's very interesting because the soil, the structure of the soil has arcilla, meaning that they don't need too big investments to adequate these horrendous holes left by mining in the river, in the basin, to collect water for irrigation for the new forest they are planting. So there is a very interesting transformation. I wish I could take you there because it's really fantastic to see these Black communities. Imagine that in Amazonia there are no African origin people, but during the war in the 1930s with Peru, the Colombia and Peru were fighting for a piece of land. The soldiers were brought from the Pacific coast, and the grandfathers of these people, they stayed there, these Black communities, Black African communities in an indigenous Indian Amazon area. And they stayed there and they were doing the mining. And now they declare in a very proud way, we are ex-illegal miners and we are conservationists. Wow. So how can you not help these people claiming the rights of being conservationists? And I have another group with whom I'm also interacting in they are ex-coca planters. Coqueros y raspachines. Raspachines are those small, peasants who have small plots where they plant coca trees and they sell. But nowadays there is a problem of the market. Let me tell you that the production of coca is in bankrupt here because they are not buying anymore the production that these small peasants were, and it's an accumulated coca leaf production because of fentanyl and other chemical drugs. So they are really getting in a very disturbing food security situation because their economy is not working as it used to work before. So they're claiming the rights to be conservationists, and they want to change from ex-coca growers to cacao growers, from coca to cacao, and other Amazonian plants, acai, camu camu, name it. There are a lot of fruits that are now a la mode in the market from Amazonia. So we are looking at this phenomena that is happening in associations and local groups. And this, I would say, when you hear the guys ex-coqueros this is in front of Rio Caquetá, Baja Bota Caucana. This is in one of the departments where the Andes and the plains meet, a key place of connectivity for fauna and flora, because there are corridors, biological corridors of all this fauna from Amazonia that goes up the hill and down the hill. It's a fantastic place. So talking about legal rights, people are asking for their rights, human rights. There is awareness on this issue. And I think water and human rights are going now together in the culture, in the minds of people, of local people.
Yeah, thank you very much, Margherita. Very interesting. I don't know if there are other questions or eventually connected to this one. Don't be shy. Okay, we have a question from Salah Ouhamdouche. I'm sorry, I'm sure the pronunciation is not good. So as the European countries based on the agricultural production of African countries, my question is, to what degree can we make a connection in terms of water between Europe and the countries of North Africa? And Salah, is this question for someone in particular, maybe for Francesca, or is it a general one? Yeah, I'd assume that it's a general one, so I don't know if someone from the speakers want to take it and reply. Okay, so it's a general question. So I don't know, maybe if someone wants to reply. I believe maybe the most appropriate is Francesca here.
Can you hear me? All right. So this is a very huge issue. When I was working for UNESCO in Ghana, Italians were actually producing a dumping on the tomatoes of Ghana. What does this mean? That we Italians were exporting our tomatoes to such a low price that Ghanaian farmers could not sell their own products because of the import of Italian tomato, Italian condensed tomato. Okay, so obviously there is a huge interconnection between Europe and, I mean, Africa is nothing. There are different countries, different regions, different situation. We have the Northern African countries, which are our brother in the Mediterranean area. And we have a political connection in terms of agriculture for a double reason. First of all, we have the penetration of agricultural products of the Mediterranean, Southern Mediterranean area in Europe, and this is very much contested by European farmers because of dumping on the opposite side in this case, because European laws are much more restricted in terms of pesticide use, minors, workforce, and a series of other reasons. Then we have the production of agricultural goods which are penetrating sub-Saharan African countries to a lower price, which are impeding them to produce locally. And then we have also food aid and food subsidies, which are interfering with the food resilience and food sovereignties of sub-Saharan Africa. So it's much more, this question cannot be answered in few minutes, because Africa is not a country, as we know, and the sub-regions of the continent must be analyzed in different ways. We have, for example, the European Green Deal, which is trying to implement a strategy so that we cannot import from countries which are not respecting the European rules on the use of the workforce and the use of pesticides. So we are also trying to impose barriers on what we import. And then there are the poverty of European farmers as well. So basically, I would like to say that farmers in the end and agricultural workers are always the loser of the situation of the global food market, because then we have the land grabbers, then we have the people who are devising large irrigation schemes, large agricultural schemes for the sake of who? For the sake of big investors and financiarization, extractivism of water, extractivism of land for the big money and the big financial market. So I don't talk about countries anymore. I talk about private sector and public sector, big financiarization of food production, which is even bigger than what European governments are able to manage.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Yeah, I could personally cite also a couple more of examples of that, honestly, and I think someone else might. And probably this is not the case of North Africa. Probably is related also with other countries. Also, I mean, we know very well extractivism also from South American scholars and so on. So thank you very much. It was really complete answer. Other questions from the audience? I don't know. Don't be shy. I have some. So actually, like, this is a very huge question. Rather than an answer, I'm asking your perspective on this. So it appears clear that eventually we are talking about water peace, or like leveraging water for peace, but this is a good headline. But if you want to go in deep, it immediately, also from your comments, it immediately came out, I think, another word that probably is justice. And that's related with environmental justice, not only with what you call water justice and so on. So I want to, like, basically change the topic a little bit and asking you, I mean, we discussed about non-conventional water for peace, and also rainwater, groundwater, and so on. But what about the link between water, peace, and justice?
May I start?
Please, I knew that.
I would like to connect this question with the presentation of Dr. Chloe Nicholas. She was talking about groundwater intensive use for export-led agriculture. Okay, but what is the right of people from the UK to eat asparagus from the Guarani aquifer in Peru? What is their right? Is it just? Is it fair that people are eating other people's water, that people are irrigating with groundwater, which is in most of the case very vulnerable, if not renewable? For example, we know that the Nubia sandstone aquifer in Northern Africa is not renewable, or renewable maybe in 30,000 years. So water justice is not just local, is not what political ecology and critical geographers call contested hydrosocial territories, no? So that there is a huge mapping of water justice and water injustice and struggles all over the world. Is not just that, is also invisible, what we cannot see, what no one talks about, billions and billions of water being exported in the silence. Because virtual water export, agricultural export are politically silent. No one see it, but it's a huge injustice, and it's all over the world. So my my aim as a scientist is being also an activist scientist, and water justice has to do with every one of us. In Italy, and this is my personal research at Bergamo University, we are the 10th largest exporter on earth of vulnerable aquifer for irrigation, of irrigation water from vulnerable aquifer, the 10th largest exporter. And no one knows that. No one knows that. We have no idea. So basically, water injustice, it's first of all visible when you have social contestation and you can see people protesting, okay? But the majority of the injustice of how we deal with water, it's in the big water and it's silent.
Thank you very much. Margherita, please.
Well, listening to Francesca, I was thinking in Cambodia. I came back from Cambodia a month ago, and we were sailing by the Mekong River, and one of the issues is the dams, which are built upstream. And when you think that these transboundary rivers, in this case the Mekong River, such an important axis for Southeast Asia that goes and finishes in Vietnam, and the dam, the closest dam, is in Laos, and it's coming from Tibet. Well, you think is how can different governments act? They don't put their act together as a region. They start doing dams, and that's one issue I wanted to raise about Southeast Asia. We have something similar with Rio Cauca in Colombia, and this is a country with hydroelectricas. Hydroelectric is like 80% of the production. So this country has clean energy, but I mean, how clean is it when you produce displaced people that have to suffer downstream the lack of fish, food insecurity, water, polluted water, and downstream local fishermen, and you see how governments deal with these decisions. Is that environmental justice? Producing hydroelectric, huge dams, but producing social and cultural problems? I just leave that on the table.
If everybody's shy, I can close on this issue of the dams if you want.
Yeah.
As we saw before. Sorry.
No, I was saying like
I was quickly touching this point with my presentation, but obviously in 20 minutes.
No, Francesca, sorry for just a moderation intervention. Since we are mindful of the time also of the speakers, we might finish with this intervention from you if Chloe has nothing to add. Maybe Chloe has something to add.
No, yes, just very quickly, I agree with what Francesca says, and I would like just to do the link with my presentation. And yes, the scarcity and injustice in Tunisia is not just a problem of Tunisian government and Tunisia people, and I think it's very urgent to understand that scarcity and injustice, water injustice in global south, are also the responsibility of global north. That we have to start developing a hard criticism against our ways of life in global north, because that's why produce also scarcity and injustice in global south.
Thank you, Chloe. Now, Francesca, if you want to close on the dam issue.
Yes, I cannot agree more on what Dr. Nicholas just said. On the dams, just to mention the word, is power. Power is what makes countries not respect the international water law, which is basically telling everyone that you cannot use water in your own country without producing harm to another country. So international water law is not respected, dams are built, and dams, and this is why also Professor Menga here today to talk us about the political power exerted by dams, because dams are actually built not just for producing electricity or irrigating fields, but as an exertion of political power.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, there is a huge, I think that refers to the hydrohegemony concept, kind of. So, I mean, there is a lot of more, but like for the sake of being mindful of the time, I leave the floor to Professor Bresci for some closing remarks. And I will not speak anymore. So thank you very much on my side, and please do not be afraid of maybe following the project or keeping in touch with us. I will be very happy. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to all the speakers. So really, I appreciate very much this your presentation and the discussion. And as always, it happens, the discussion is the most active part of the webinar, but it's arrived quite late. So my suggestion is, if you are available, we can start again with the discussion in a new webinar that we can organize maybe some months from now. The same within the AG-WaMED, because for us it's important to keep alive this subject within the project, and maybe we can also illustrate some other results that we are going to obtain the next month, and discussion also on the use of the non-conventional water within the stakeholders in each living lab. So why not try to organize another one? We will ask you for the availability. It could be July or it could be September, but I really would like to make another meeting like this. So really, thank you very much. Thank you to all the organizer that within the water harvesting lab that really made a very good job, and obviously thanks to the auditors, because without them the webinar is nothing. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank you.
very good to continue. The discussion is very interesting. And I think it's very good to have different regions represented here, so we can have the feedback from one or the other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And I
you.
hope sometime we will meet you in
Thank you.
person.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.